Welcome back to another episode of the FOD. This is our first episode of 2022, looking to be a bigger and better year for us than 2021. To kick off another compelling episode, I am very excited to have someone that I've been trying to coax into appearing onto the episode for a while now. I'm welcoming John Williams to episode 3 of the FOD. Welcome, John.
Hi everyone.
So, John, you have been operating in tech for over 25 years.
Yeah, that's right. It's been a long time.
And approximately, it's about 17 years at sea level.
Yes, yeah, around about that.
So you also set up Amplience in 2010, which has gone from strength to strength. And not only did you do that, but you're also a key figure in the MACH Alliance, which I believe you're now sat on as a member of the Technology Council. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so been on there for a while now.
So it's quite a repertoire already we have.
Yeah, it keeps me busy.
It'd be really good to understand how you got there.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start right at the beginning because maybe some people are interested how I maybe got into IT. And it actually starts, 25 years ago, whatever it was, maybe longer, 30 years ago. And I was actually working on a farm and it was in Durham County. So back in the Northeast, back near my hometown. And it was really, really, really cold. It gets really cold there in the winter. And you're out there on a farm, had a lot of difficulty because during that time there was a recession and I'd worked in lots of factory jobs. And I had this opportunity to do an IT course. And all the way from being 11 years old, I've been writing games, I've been learning programming, but it's because I like to do it. I really enjoy technology. And this course came along, I thought, why not? Why not try that? And I did the course and I got through it really quickly. So within 6 months, I actually got the equivalent of an A level.
Wow.
And I thought, if I can do that, I can go to university, surely. So I'm still on the farm. I applied to university, Teesside Uni, and they gave me an opportunity to do the degree course. I had to do a bunch of other little courses as well before that. And it was at that moment I decided that I was going to move into IT and start kind of a new career. And I worked incredibly hard at university because I didn't want to be working back on that farm again. Not that there's anything wrong with working on a farm. It's not what I wanted to do. So I worked incredibly hard at uni, got a first class honours, did a lot of really good work. And at that point, I then moved to London and applied to work at Reuters, which was a fantastic basis to start a career. Because actually I was working on an internal product. So I learned loads about product development. I was working with extraordinarily senior, experienced people. And I was traveling across Europe as well, implementing software, the older type of software. So it was a really good grounding. And it was from that I launched into agency. And it was when .com boom was happening. I joined a company. Yeah, just around 2000. So it was really in that height of the .com boom. It was a really incredible, exciting time. I joined there as a tech lead. It was a company called IXL then. It changed its name about 5 or 6 times till it finally became Digitas. And but it went through a whole series of different things. And I met loads of fantastic people, including my CEO, James Brooke. So we were working on all kinds of technology, content management, e-commerce. I worked pretty much in every sector, used all kinds of different technology. So it was a really good way of learning lots about different sectors and lots about different technologies, right? Because every project is different. And plus you got to work with lots of really cool creative people. So a lot of the solutions were quite innovative and creative. So that was fantastic. I worked there for about 10 years. I actually did an MBA, which I think is important to round off your skill set if you want to be a CTO. And then James asked me to go and join him. And it was a company called 10CMS back in the day. And there was a small number of people. I remember, I think it was about 10 of us altogether when I joined. And it had this really interesting, basically an SDK, and it was written in Flash of all things. And James wanted to move it from being more services and more SDK to being a SaaS platform. So I joined like a real startup environment, right, pretty much at the beginning of that journey. And as a CTO, my job was to help take that business vision of basically a new form of content management for retail and e-commerce, and take the Flash SDK into this whole new world and a new way of business users able to reuse media. It was all very canvassy based, rich media. It was right, we're taking over the front end and injecting into e-commerce platforms. That was how we kind of started. And you know what? 6 months after that, Steve Jobs said Flash was dead. And I thought, great, that's fantastic. What are we going to do now? And we did a whole bunch of innovation on how we transformed all of the interaction that we did from Flash into HTML5, and we had a parallel way of deploying it, so you'd have the same consistent experience on every single browser, which was quite unique. Then it was quite difficult to do. Then we built the company around a new form of digital media delivery. So we had this dynamic media platform, which basically meant you could take your master assets, which we were using already in the platform, and then allow you to send them out through an API in any shape, size, or form that you want. So if you have a giant master image, you can then go and access that, say, as a thumbnail. You can go and change it from a PNG to a JPEG. You can do all sorts of things that you could cut, crop it, do all sorts of things. But all of it was done dynamically on the fly, so just through a URL. And we started that off with the intention of doing sort of mid-market, because there was already a big player in the market doing this. And we were doing it as an adjunct to the rest of the software we had. But actually, it actually really took off, and we started deploying it to massive enterprise retailers. And all of a sudden, we went from like a few thousand requests a day to where we are now, where we're doing billions of requests in a single day. So the way we had to design that was quite unique. We had to take it from zero to billions of requests, and the design pattern has held up today. And it's something that we've used in the rest of the system when we moved away from the owning the head, which is what we were doing when we first started, to being fully headless. So we took all the knowledge we had around APIs, and we built really the next generation of CMS, which is a headless CMS based on MACH principles. And that's kind of where we are today. We've got a huge number of customers, mainly around the enterprise space, but we also have some really interesting brands on the platform, and everybody's using this platform to deliver all of their content and all of their media. Like I said, I think we did 13.5 billion requests for content and media on Black Friday this year. So yeah, it's been a huge success. Very exciting, really exciting journey.
Absolutely. So you transitioned from when you left, it was Digitas LBI, right?
Yeah.
To set up Amplience on your own?
No, so like I said, James and team and a couple of founders had a company called 10CMS already.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and it was kind of a little bit of product, bit of quasi services and product. It was really an SDK that you could deploy and then build upon. Working with James, what we wanted to do was turn that into a pure SaaS model. So it was a multi-tenanted API-based SaaS model. And that's what we did. We took that kind of kernel of an idea and turned it into what Amplience is today.
Okay. So you've been running that for 10, 12 years?
Yeah, so we started back 2010. So yeah, that's 12 years now. Okay. But we went through a lot of iterations. Like all startups, you spend a lot of time at the beginning pivoting and finding your space. And sometimes you're a little bit ahead of the curve. So even when we built our first headless CMS, it wasn't even called headless CMS then, right? It was sort of content as a service. And now it's a huge thing, right? Headless, Mac-based architectures. So it's took time for us to reach market, but also we've kind of pivoted and learned a huge amount about e-commerce and content delivery during that process.
What have you found is the most difficult thing in running your own business over the past 12 years?
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges that all of us have in business is change. I mean, change is the new constant, so to speak. All the way through from 10 CMS into Amplience as we are today, there's been a huge amount of change. So we went from the Steve Jobs that Flash is dead when we have Flash technology. How do you deal with that? All the way to now with the pandemic and how we have to change the way that we work, how habits are changing in terms of shopping, and a huge amount of uncertainty over the last 2 years. But I think that's always been there in our industry. Things move really fast. Things change all of the time, and it's going to continue to do that. And I think that one of the most important skill sets you can have is to kind of just embrace the change and become more sort of robust and tolerant of change, and just actually deal with it and use it as an opportunity. And I think that's probably the hardest thing overall, is the amount of change that you have to deal with. And it, you know, it's like as a technologist, you build something and you get attached to it. And actually, what you do kind of get attached to things. But actually, you've got to understand that it can't stay that way. That there is, change is going to keep happening, and all of our customers are facing the same thing, and that's why they're looking at new technology platforms and new ways of doing things. And I came up with a term that I've been starting to use now, which is, it's not about being future-proof, because you can't be, right? Future-proof means you've built something and it doesn't matter what happens, it's going to work. I've kind of changed the terminology to future-ready, which is actually, you just put steps in place to deal with change and be ready for the fact that something is going to change, and you know it's going to happen, and you're going to have all the tools and the ability to actually respond to those changes.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I saw that. That does make a lot of sense. So what do you think is the thing that's shaping the industry most right now?
Yeah, I think there are three key things that are going on right now. So obviously, the pandemic has had a massive impact, and what it's really done is accelerated the change I think that was going to happen anyway in terms of e-commerce. It's changed the way that we shop. It's changed the way that we work. I mean, we have hybrid working now, lots of remote working, lots of hybrid working. You don't necessarily have to be in an office anymore. So that has fundamentally changed. And even at a personal level, it's changed the way that we communicate with each other. I mean, if I go into, even with my own parents, they're going online, they're using an iPad, and they've even got the telly connected now to Facebook, and they're FaceTiming people, the rest of the family across the country, and talking to their grandkids out in Leeds when they're in Middlesbrough, and I'm talking. So I think that everybody is changing it. Everyone's using digital technology in a different way to communicate and to work and to shop. I think so I think that's a key thing in terms of what's shaping the industry, that retailers and brands have to move towards digital as the primary channel if they haven't done so already. And if you're resistant to that, you're going to start to struggle. I think the other thing that's shaping it is one around social media. So I think I've seen a stat that says something like nearly a third of referrals onto e-commerce platforms are now made through social channels, through social media. And it's something like, since the pandemic, I think it's something like a number of 2.5 hours a day people spend on social media. And a big part of that's Facebook. People watch a lot of YouTube. So you've got this huge upswell of use of social media, more than there ever has been before. I think it's doubled in the last 2 years. And that's affecting how we shop, how you start the shopping journey. So before, you would have this frictionless commerce model. You sort of land on a landing page, homepage, landing page. You then search and browse through list of pages. You go to a product detail page, you make a decision, and then you go and check out, right? It's that kind of model. And all of the historical e-commerce platforms have been built around that model, been built around that shopping journey. Whereas now, that journey doesn't happen in your platform anymore. It can start happening when you're in social media. So you'll be browsing or watching some YouTube, you think, I like that, find a link, go to it, or find something, search for it, be in Pinterest, find a pin, link directly into a product details page. So the journey can start at any point within your system, in your digital experience. So you now have to start thinking differently. You have to start thinking about how do you make your platform adapt to where people are in the journey? How do you deal with context? And it's not just context of, am I using a mobile phone, an app, or a desktop? It's where am I at in terms of that journey? Where am I at in terms of my decision making? You've got a very small amount of time for someone when they go onto your site to grab their attention and help them make a decision about what they want to buy. And people have the average of 10 browser sessions open at once. So if you've got all of these browser sessions open at once and all you're doing is saying what price it is, a little bit of details on what the product is, and cut some nice images, you can have 10 of them open and make a decision on where you want to buy it. So you have to start dealing with the digital experience itself, and being more contextual and being more personalized about how do you work with the context the customer is in at that point in time, rather than just go, right, there's a product, someone will buy it.
Okay. So
I guess I said 3, right? So the other one, I think, which is, sorry about that. I think the other one that's important, which is gaining more importance, is that of sustainability. And I know that, there's been a lot of things in the news about sustainability and how do we deal with that? And I think what's going to be really important is not just what product you buy and the brand story, but also where that product has came from, how that product has been produced, what is the social, the sustainability of that product, what's the impact on the environment of that product. I think there are new pieces of technology around blockchain that are going to help us understand where that actual product has come from, what's the history of that actual product. And I think we'll start seeing more of that this year. I believe. I think that we're all going to have to do more around sustainability and understand more about the impacts of the things that we're buying. And in the future, that may go beyond just the history of a product in terms of when you're buying it, a new product, but also the fact that we can't live in a sort of throwaway society anymore, that we got to recycle these products, and they'll bring up new business models around e-commerce. So if you've got blockchain tech that identifies that product and it goes out into the world, you could actually have the history of who owned it before, what damage it has, or start generating stories around the items that we buy and then resell.
Yeah, this is the e-commerce thing we were talking about before started. So interesting 3 key topics. The pandemic is a very clear one. You said it's fast forwarded our buying behaviors. By how much do you think? How many years have we been fast forwarded?
Yeah, I mean, I always think it's pretty immediate, but I'm never right about that. So I think that there are other things that are going on there that are out there right now that will happen in the next 2 or 3 years. There's things like metaverse and all of those kind of things that are going to come in, which is also a part of that buying behavior. I think that the buying behavior has actually changed now. People are generally using digital as the primary channel. Like I said, there's already 1/3 of referrals going into e-commerce platforms. The whole thing around the MACH technology, the reason why that's important is it starts to decouple the actual experience, the way that you build the experience, away from the content, the data, and the functionality, which means that you can start experimenting more quickly, right? So rather than have these, right, we're going to do a big bang approach around a brand new digital experience, and then that's a new way of doing it, it's going to be much more iterative. So, it's going to be in smaller stages.
I've got some questions on that, actually, on the MACH and the Headless.
Yeah, sure.
Before I ask you those, I'd be interested to know that we've got the pandemic, we've got social media and sustainability. There's 3 big things that are changing the e-commerce buying behaviors at the moment. How's that affecting how Amplience operates and your strategy?
Yeah, so I think the key thing about, which I'll go back to the MACH bit of it, I think the key thing for us is that, by being headless, by using MACH architectural principles, so basically separating the concerns of where something's going to be to how you're going to create it and how you're going to create content from how it's going to be used. It's a key strategy around how you can be ready for the future for all of these things that are happening. Because if you're bedded into like the old world where you had these big monoliths, where everything is sort of grouped together and is very good at one particular thing, it's really hard to adapt and to be agile enough to kind of deal with these evolving changes around, like I think we've already seen this around the pandemic, right, where there was a whole bunch of retailers had to suddenly have things like curbside pickup and faster delivery times and an actual website that would work with the right volumes of traffic. And it's I think that's where we play an important part in that, which is where our technology works, and the fact that we deliver everything through APIs, and the fact that we are fully scalable means that we're ready for retailers to adopt this technology, but not have to kind of do these massive sort of re-platforming exercise, but you can iterate through it. And how that's driving our strategy is that we're actually increasing the amount of teams that we're having right now. And we are looking at helping retailers across lots of interesting areas. So things like helping to build better ways of developing product experiences. So looking at, product experience management is a big thing we're looking at right now. And it's about how do we join our own technology around content and digital assets, but also with other MACH partners and other APIs from other systems. How do we bring that together and allow retailers to kind of start building these next generation of experiences without having to worry too much about the overall technical sort of implementation all the way through to the back end.
Okay, we kind of led into the headless commerce.
Yeah.
So if we're on that path, I've got a few questions that
sure.
are either things that interest me about it because there seems to be a big future for headless, but also things that I tend to get asked by our clients as well. So one of them is whether or not headless is genuinely a new concept, or whether it's kind of existing e-com platform development, just repackaged and well marketed.
Yeah, it is a completely different way of doing things. So I think if you look at older monolithic platforms, which I've implemented a lot, and they've done an extraordinary job, they've been very successful, and they've helped to get to where we are today. I mean, a lot of those were suite-based, so you basically got everything apparently integrated all in one box. They were never fully integrated once you actually got there to implement them. But they were kind of all in kind of one box. They were built to deal with the challenge of building e-commerce sites in the web environment, and particularly around desktop-based environments. They also had, because they were joined together, they also had this concept, I would say, around this kind of frictionless e-commerce, right? They had templates already embedded into them around what the experience would be. And I guess with headless e-commerce, what you're actually doing is you don't have a kind of fully baked in front-end experience. You have the APIs to build any experience. So if your experience is in a digital application on a mobile phone and it's a native app, then you can use the APIs to do that. And you're not trying to hardwire it around some JavaScript or around some sort of JSPs or some other Java kind of platform, and then try and put an API over it and try and make it work. And it's all kind of a bit dysfunctional. You actually can use the same APIs in your web environment to your sort of native environment. And we've even got customers that are going beyond just web and app standard, but actually using it in IoT devices. So we have a customer that is building experiences on displays in kind of petrol stations, for instance, so that you can go and order products from at the same time as you're refueling. We have a customer, one of my favorite ones, because I actually bought their product myself, Traeger grills, where we actually help send content into their grills because they have these Wi-Fi enabled grills, as well as the website, things like recipes and things like that. So useful things. So we're seeing more of that, right? The fact that you can kind of have all of these joined up experiences that go beyond just going into a native app web applications, or in-store apps, and we do a lot of that as well. And I think that's the real difference, is that you've basically, before you'd buy a platform, you had to kind of get everything in a box, and you get some things that were really good that worked, and you get some things that weren't so good, and you then have to try and work out how you'd join other bits of tech into that. And you had the thing called a stack. So if you're on Java, then you can only have Java stuff, and if you're on .NET, you're stuck with all the .NET stuff. Whereas you don't have to worry about that anymore. What you actually can do is build a platform from best of breed suppliers, because they're all doing stuff through an API. You don't have to worry anymore, because it's in the cloud, around the scaling and having a massive team of people that just feed and water your servers. You can actually have people that are focused on innovation. You can have your technologists can be focused on differentiating what you are doing as a business, rather than just doing standard technology management around servers and things like that.
So as opposed to being confined by the technology, it's opening up the ability to be innovative.
Yeah, and I think that by having everything as APIs, it's not just the separation of the front end and the back end. We're going to see more APIs being joined up across different systems to allow you to have either new experiences for customers, like we're working on something right now around product experience management, to deal with the fact that you need product details pages that are much more than giving you details. They're landing pages in themselves, all the way to how you might join up backend systems to enable your own business users to work in your business processes the way that you need to do as a business, as opposed to just being given a fixed business process that you have to adopt and run and then try and bend out of shape to manage what you're doing. So all the way from your buying processes, how you're managing products, how you're dealing with warehouse and logistics, all of those things now can start to be tied up together in much more unique ways through the APIs.
Okay. So you're seeing more brands, more retailers look to adopt the headless commerce approach. Are you seeing a trend with the type of retailer, tier 1, tier 2?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of tier 1s now starting to make the leap. I think it's more about the going back to the sort of the adoption curve, right, and crossing the chasm type model, where what we're seeing before were people with really kind of burning platforms, or people who were real innovators who wanted to kind of make the leap and do something different. It's now moving away from that and becoming more mainstream, which means that we're hitting a lot of the big tier 1 retailers now, as well as some of the the more innovative kind of sort of mid-market retailers, the tier 2s. So I think that it's getting closer to being fully across the chasm, so to speak, and hitting the kind of mass market. We're just in that sort of steep curve, the steep climb to the curve right now in terms of crossing the chasm. I think we're going to see a lot more Mac-based architectures and headless architectures. And I'm already seeing customers that are using, say, the MACH Alliance as a way of choosing their technology. So they'll go, right, we're going to go headless. Let's go Mac, because that's a great architecture pattern to follow. So if we're going to go down that route, let's make sure that they're accredited through the MACH Alliance. So we're seeing a lot more of that now. Okay.
So one of the key selling points that I've seen pushed is around the monoliths and the upgrade paths. So big, huge, expensive, time-consuming upgrades. And there's a lot of talk about microservices being versionless. Now, how accurate is that? The question I'm asked is more around the fact that irrespective, whatever software you choose to integrate, it will have to be upgraded. There will be releases, new versions, right?
Yeah, so I think the difference is, right, so in the past, it's not quite a CD, but it's not far off a CD, right? You would basically have version 1 of an e-commerce platform, let's just say, right? I won't give any names, or a version 1 of a CMS. And then, you'd go away as a product team and you'd go and build something. 6 months, a year, 18 months later, you've got this really nice, shiny, huge, massively capable new version. And you go to your customers, or customers go, right, we want this new version. And then you've got to work out all sorts of things like what's the operating system? What are all of the libraries that need to be done? And you have to go through this upgrade, and then the data might change because some changes will happen in the database. So you've got to do this huge amount of change migration, which means then you need a huge amount of testing and regression testing. You have to go through this whole exercise just to upgrade it. You haven't even implemented the new features, right? You've just gone, right now, we can implement some new features. And these processes can take, even on when they've moved them apparently to a cloud, they can take up to 3 months or more, right? Just to do that upgrade. And you haven't got anything new yet. Now you can start doing something new. It's very different in the Mac world, because the API, what most of us do in the Mac world is we make sure that all of our APIs are backward compatible. We did something in the order of 420 releases on our platform last year. Lots and lots of small changes, some of them rolled up into bigger changes. It didn't affect anything that a customer needed to do. They just continue to use the platform. They're probably oblivious to the fact that there were changes made because there was no downtime. They didn't have to make any code changes. The only time you need to make changes is when you release a new bit of functionality and you want to take advantage of that functionality. There may be times then where it might be a brand new API that does something. We did a new API, for instance, around hierarchical content, and we actually created a new API that was super performant. And then customers could choose to use that later on and implement it and try it out. And they didn't have to do a big bang approach. They could use parts of it, bring them into different parts of the experience. So you can kind of do things in smaller pieces. The other thing is, if you've got a monolith and then you want to move to a Mac-based architecture, before you would have to go, and this is where we used to have a lot of work in agency, was that whole replatforming cycle. You've got this, they've decided to go with an Oracle version, and now they want to go to an IBM, and now they want to go to Hybris or whatever, right? And we were kind of spending a lot of time just replatforming, re-implementing e-commerce platforms. But now what you can do is choose a piece in your customer journey, say like the product page or the home page or wherever you want, and you can kind of build a micro application, so a micro front end, for instance, around that, and then start using the new APIs. So you don't have to replace the entire platform. You could just replace the basket. You could just replace the product page and implement that first and then iterate. So and there's nothing stopping you from doing it. You can literally have a smaller team, make smaller changes and do iterations and use the APIs that are appropriate at that point, rather than having to kind of go, right, we need to throw the platform out. We've got a platform over here, a brand new one, and we're going to make the switch, and then cross your fingers, but we've got a rollback plan if we need to, right? You don't need to do that anymore. You can strangle out a monolith.
Which, given the changes that we were talking about with the pandemic and social media and such, big one, I now buy more stuff through Instagram than I ever have.
Yeah.
Comes up and it's like, oh, yeah, I quite like that. And then you're off, you ordered by PayPal and it's done, and there you go. But so it's that adaptability that the headless architecture provides, which is going to be so useful for retailers. So if you're a massive retailer on a monolith platform that is functioning, doing its job right now, when is the best time to consider moving to headless, and what are the main considerations you really need to think about?
Yeah, I mean, the reason to move to headless is not because you just want to change the technology, right? So, I mean, you don't just, it's not like, oh, this is a nice bit of tech, let's just move to that. And there's a little bit in that, the fact that if you've got a big tech team, there is a huge war out for talent, which is a different discussion we'll probably cover later. And you've got to keep your technologists engaged, otherwise they'll kind of leave. There's a little bit of that, but that's not the reason to kind of move. The reason to move is because of your own customers. Your own customers are now demanding more from your digital experience. And if you're on an older monolithic platform, you're probably suffering from things like you want to do change, but it takes a long time because you're going through these dev, test, and deployment cycles, which take way too long. By the time you've done the change, it's already too late, right? Because you have to be super fast. You're probably suffering from the fact that as a business, you're not being as agile or as reactive as you need to be. It may be that the whole digital experience and how customers want to engage with is completely changing, and you need to adapt. It may be that the platform is just too clunky now. It's been out there for a long time. It's been built on and built on and built on. It's become this giant bit of spaghetti. It's costing a huge amount to maintain, and you just can't do the things that you need to do anymore. I mean, if you're just a steady state business, nothing is changing, you don't need to react to changes quickly, you're in a particular market like that, then you probably will stay, right? But if you're in any of those situations where the customer environment is changing, their expectations around how they think they should be engaging with you is changing, because it's generational as well. If you get the younger generations or the up and coming generations, they expect far more from a digital experience than maybe we do, because we've kind of grown up with it. If you're in that kind of scenario where things have to change and you have to make changes quickly, it's going to be really difficult to do it on a monolith. And Mac-based architecture and headless architectures are the way to go, because you don't have to do it all at once. Like I said, you can do it in smaller pieces, and you can be much more agile as a business.
Yeah, absolutely. So you touched on one of the reasons potentially to stay focused on new tech is to retain your talent, retain your tech.
Yeah.
Techies. And there is a war for talent. We know, you both know that it's difficult right now. How is that impacting Amplience? And also, how is the adoption of Headless changing how and what you hire for?
Yeah, so we are in the process of adding far more teams into the product area. So we're adding, I think, another 5 teams, for instance, to cover a whole range of different features and functionality. And it's going to be an exciting time this year. Actually, we've got some really cool stuff in the works, and we're hiring quite aggressively now. It's easy said, right, we're going to add these teams, but the hard bit is the environment that we're in. Everybody's doing the same. I think, this big push to digital means that everybody else is looking for developers to help move their platforms on, whether you're on customer side or product side, or whether you're even in other industries. There's a huge war for talent right now. Some of the ways that we're changing, which is an advantage for a lot of businesses right now, is around remote working. So you don't have to be attached to an office anymore. And there are some people and some businesses going fully remote and not even having an office. But I see offices as an advantage in terms of, if you want to come in, maybe you're living in a little flat or something and you want to kind of go out and be somewhere else for a while, then you can come into an office. Or if you want a place in which you can collaborate, you have an office that you can go into. So we have our 3 offices in different parts of the country. But they're there as hubs for people to meet up, right? Rather than be kind of a factory for knowledge workers, so to speak. So I think using remote working and having more access to a large talent pool is going to help. But at the same time, everybody else is doing the same thing. So it's still in a net neutral kind of thing. So the other thing to look at, I think, and the other way that we're focusing is actually on more junior talent. So looking at new sources of bringing talent into the business. So we've always had a lot of success with graduates straight out of university who have a really good relationship with Teesside University. And we're looking to do more of that. But there are new ways in which there are like boot camps. There are all sorts of companies out there to help people like me at the beginning, right? When I was passionate about technology, and fortunately I managed to get into higher education and go through that process. But some people can't do that. And there are new ways in which you can bring passionate, smart people into the technology arena. And we're looking at how we can access that talent and how we can grow and nurture that talent. I had another interesting was I had a discussion with a different CTO a while ago around, look, we're going to pull more juniors into the business, and we're going to spend more time focusing on the people in our teams, help grow them into more senior positions, and sort of grow it from the bottom. And there was this kind of heated debate around the pyramid, like how many junior people can you have? If you have more junior people, is it going to make the product quality suffer and all of that. And I think that it's down to us all as leaders and managers in the business to help bring more junior people and help mentor them into being very productive, super fantastic engineers. And I think that just using if you have juniors, it's going to lower the quality. I think you will suffer in terms of overall getting that talent. And I think it's down to us all in the industry actually to play our part in building a larger talent pool, and helping wherever we can.
There is a big conversation around bringing juniors through, because there's time to bring them up to speed, and before they become potentially billable on client side, for example.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I'm interested to understand is 6-7 years ago, you would have had a Hybris implementation. So you would have hired a Hybris PM, Hybris BA, Hybris backend devs.
Yeah.
Now, because the implementation may pick and choose from any number of technologies, what do you look for from your PM, from your BA? What kind of skill sets and technology experience are you looking for?
Yeah, so I think that, there's a divide between sort of the front-end developers and the back-end developers, and then you have your full stack, which kind of join. So we'll be looking from a developer's perspective with developers at the front end. Now, there's a lot of demand for React developers out there. What we look for are really smart front-end developers that have a real passion for front-end technology and less focused on detailed skill sets on a particular framework. If they've got experience in frameworks like React, Vue, we're also looking at Svelte right now as well, because it performs really well in terms of a user admin interface rather than a consumer interface. Then we're more than happy to bring front-end developers in, and it won't take them long to get up to speed with the technology. But for me, it's all about the passion for the technology in that area. And then on the back end, we're still hiring people, either Java developers, but people who have worked in sort of high volume, highly scalable environments and have an understanding of things like microservices and more of the headless type architectures, as opposed to the older kind of enterprise Java architectures, right? So we tend to have, it's much more about being lightweight and faster on building APIs for lighter and faster, as opposed to big clunky kind of enterprise scale things. So also being on new technologies, things like serverless architecture. We are 100% Amazon's AWS, so having really good skills in that kind of cloud-based technology, particular in Amazon. If they come from one of the other areas like in Azure, that's kind of fine. But that we do leverage a lot of the AWS technology, so that's another kind of skill set we're looking for. Yeah. In terms of the rest of these supporting skill sets, so we're always we still hire and still quite aggressively hire QA and testers. There is a big discussion in the industry whether it should all be automated testing or whether you should have QAs. We're still in the mindset that you need both, because they cover different parts of it. So we look for lots of testers and QA, and I find that particularly difficult in our country because there aren't any university courses or any courses that teach people the skills around QA and testing, which there should be, because it's a valuable skill. And then in terms of things like product owners, we won't necessarily hire PMs, for instance. We are hiring product owners. There's been a switch from project development and project management to product ownership. And it goes into the fact that the way that we run things is very close to the Spotify model, where we have multidisciplinary teams. So rather than have an army of front-end developers on one side of the room, an army of back-end developers in the other, and then a bunch of people are running around between them all saying, which teams are they in? Are they in my team or somebody else's? We go for that whole multidisciplinary team, and we build the teams with the right skill sets we need for that particular development. So it may be heavier on the back end, say, if you're on a high volume delivery API,
yeah.
and it might be a high front end set of developers if you're on the sort of business tooling side of things.
Okay.
So.
It sounds like you've got quite a lot of work to do in terms of hiring this year. Then big task.
Yeah.
I know I was speaking to Rod yesterday, who's working with you at the moment, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a business, the only way you can deal with this environment right now is to have a multi-pronged approach, right? So it's hire as you're doing traditionally through, trying to get experienced talent into the business and continue to do that and embrace things like remote working. And I go with the mantra of remote first. So everything we're doing right now needs to be remote first. So things like, having a budget to build your own sort of office and choose your own equipment in your office is super important. Make sure that when you are in the office that you've got the right equipment so that everybody can participate equally. The rules for going into the office, I tend to be around, I use these, the 2C, I have these thing called the 2Cs. I read this book a while ago around left brain, right brain, and it came into this thing around high concept and high contact. And what I mean by that is there are times when you need to innovate, do whiteboarding sessions that work extraordinarily well and more effectively if you're together in a room with a whiteboard. And there are other times when it's really important as a team or even a department or a group of people in a company that can make really deep social connections so that they get to know and be part of the company or be part of the team. Where you might need more empathy. If you're doing a one-to-one, you can do it online, but perhaps sometimes it's good to meet up and have a coffee or meet in the office so you can have, some more contact time that's more empathy-based as opposed to just a transactional a discussion as you do online. And there'll be lots of arguments around that. Well, some people say, well, you can't do that. But I think it's important that, those are the times that are important to get into the office. And you can choose to do that if you want to or not. It doesn't even have to be in the office, right? You can just meet up for a coffee and go through some things. And I think that's the rules that we're kind of following with that, which is, there are times when it makes sense to be together and you're going to be much more productive and it's going to be really helpful across the board for everybody. And there are times when, you can just do it at home. So why bother wasting 2 hours a day, come into the office when you could be more effective at home?
Yeah, 100%. Certainly, the thing, the social interaction needs to happen, but that, like I say, it's people's choices, and sometimes you are just not doing that journey and cracking at home. So yeah, okay. Well, thank you very much. I feel like I've learned a lot about Headless. So I'm pleased I can take this with me now into my conversations, and I sound like I know what I'm talking about. That wraps up another episode of the FOD. Thank you for everyone listening, and thank you, John, for giving us your insights and some real depth of information around Headless and the future of digital commerce tech. Until next time.